Chapter 20. Coyotes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It was dawn in the dry city, while a group of 3 carriages were heading west of the Black Plain territory. It was very early, and the sun was still rising on the horizon, forming an excellent view to see. The group slowly passed through the crops that were planted on this side of the territory, leaving the city behind little by little. In the second carriage, Minos was enjoying the early morning while traveling. He really liked the feeling of the wind on his face, which he felt right now outside his carriage. The temperature was very pleasant, there was a beautiful view in front of him, and only the sounds of the beasts pushing the carriages were heard. Time slowly passed when Corporal Pike approached Minos and said, "Young master, it will take us about 2 days to reach Maritime City. Since there is no other city until we get there, we will have to camp overnight." I know. Tell me about this Maritime City," Minos said curiously. After that, Pike started to say everything he knew. The Maritime City is a place within the Black Plain, where all the deals made between the Brown Kingdom and the Stone Island must pass. This is because the Black Plain covers the entire coastline of the kingdom, so the Maritime City was established there, thousands of years ago, to provide a good structure for traders who come from that island, along with their items, and also those who leave the kingdom for travel to there. But even though this city is within the Black Plain, it is managed directly by the capital, the City of the Setting Sun. After a while, Pike continued to speak. Because of this city is much stronger than our dry city. In it, there is always at least one spiritual king guarding the city for the kingdom. But wouldn't that be too bad for someone at this level to be in such a poor region?" asked Minos with a curious look. "It would be, but the kingdom gives a lot of importance to this place. That is why the capital made a major investment in a raise to improve the spiritual concentration of that city. And those guardians who stay in the Maritime City are always replaced from time to time. So, it's not such a bad thing for them." After talking for a while, Minos already understood basically about this place that they would have to pass. However, this place could certainly disrupt Minos' plans. If the Brown Kingdom found out about the Black Plain business, then the noble families would try to get a slice. But Minos had no intention of letting others reap the rewards of his labor. Therefore, there were 2 paths to follow. Establishing his own port city, and the other was to take the Maritime City. However, he would be becoming a rebel within the kingdom for this second alternative. And as a rebel, he would have to fight an entire kingdom. He also didn't have the strength to do that for years to come. Only the guardian in the Maritime City could wipe out all of Minos' forces. We have to build our own port at a considerable distance from the Maritime City, Minos thought as he calculated his next steps. This would at least delay the kingdom from laying its eyes on the Black Plain. Time passed, and the night was finally falling. The 10 soldiers had already set up a small camp. Minos was cultivating with his spiritual crystals in his tent, as it wouldn't be good if he disappeared in the middle of nowhere when a shout was suddenly heard from one of the soldiers. "Ah!" Everyone hurried to see what had happened. When they saw one of the soldiers with a sword in his hand, as he faced a group of 30 coyotes in front of him. Each of these spiritual beasts had incredibly red eyes while a string of drool dripped from their mouths. It seemed that this group of coyotes had found their dinner after a long time without food. All of them were in the 4th stage of cultivation, with the majority at the lowest levels and some close to the summit. Spiritual beasts in the spiritual world also had the same ranks of cultivation as humans. The difference was that they couldn't learn techniques. They just had ridiculously high physical strength. But some of them could have strange abilities. Therefore, beasts from the same cultivation stage as humans were normally stronger. That's why the soldier shouted before, as seeing such a large group of these beasts scared him a lot. "Are you okay, Nito?" asked one of the soldiers who had first arrived at the scene. I was just a little scared," he said as he continued to stare at the beasts. Minos then arrived at the scene after a few seconds. After seeing the group of coyotes, he smiled and said, "Everyone, calm down. This group may be large, but this is going to be perfect for testing my new technique." Minos thought as he wore a wild smile on his face. As for this technique, he was referring to. It was the technique he had chosen when he reached level 30. It was called the Devouring Art, Golden. Grade classification, 8 phases. When activated, if the enemy's power is not greater than up to 100% than the user's power, then the enemy's energy is continually sucked by this technique within a certain area. This technique would also use some absorbed energy to trigger user attacks. This technique was limited to a radius of up to 50 meters from the user and a conversion factor of 20% in lower phases. In the final realization of the technique, the conversion factor would be 100%, and the area would be up to 50 kilometers. This meant that, in the initial phase, if 100 spiritual power had been devoured, then 20 would become the power for the user of the technique to use, as long as the technique was activated. The only disadvantage of this divine technique was that Minos could not absorb this spiritual power to increase his level. Minos then activated the Devouring Art and told the soldiers, "Follow me, let's kill them all. This is good training." A circumference then formed within a radius of 50 meters. It looked like a black ring with a black fog inside. All the soldiers felt as if they had seen a technique coming straight from hell being activated. Zum. A noise started as soon as the technique was activated. At this stage, Minos was unable to limit who he would absorb spiritual power from, so if the soldiers were inside the affected area, they would suffer too. "All of you, do not enter this space. Use your techniques to send long-range attacks," said Minos as he prepared to activate his other 2 techniques. After that, each soldier began to release their attack techniques in the direction of the beasts. Boom! Boom! Explosion noises sounded, and Minos, who had already activated the spatial sword and indestructible body at the same time, was now sealing the movements of 10 beasts. The space around these 10 coyotes froze, and after another split second, Minos made several sword attacks. Each movement looked like a dance and was performed in a way that seemed excellent to the eye of the beholder. Swoosh! Swoosh! Sounds of air being cut were heard, and a second later, 10 bodies fell to the ground without their heads. Blood then began to spill from the neck of the coyotes killed by Minos, spilling large amounts of blood on the ground. It was a magnificent scene to see. Not only were the soldiers amazed at how skillful this young man was in killing, but even the beasts that were defending themselves from the soldiers' other attacks, were frightened. When one of the strongest beasts attacked Minos with a bloody expression. Grr. However, such an attack did not affect Minos, who had his indestructible body activated for the next 8 seconds. Vuup. Another sword stroke sounded as the beast was hurled away. It was unknown whether it was alive or dead, but it certainly would have no further action in this attack. Time passed slowly, and the number of beasts dropped to less than 10. Minos soldiers were killing each of them in the meantime, reaching this result. Some beasts were trying to escape, but continually losing their energy to Minos and having to dodge the soldiers' continuous attacks was very exhausting for these beasts. Soon they all died. Very well, guys. You can collect the corpses and sell when we get to Maritime City. As the value is not high, you can divide the crystals earned between you," said Minos as he headed back to his hut. After hearing this, each of the soldiers was pleased. After all, even if they were not very valuable to Minos, they could still yield more than 1,000 spiritual crystals for each of these soldiers. That was more than 200% of what they earned monthly, as corporals of the Black Plain Army. The night quickly passed, and the group prepared to leave this temporary camp as soon as the sun started to rise on the horizon. Tonight they would finally arrive in the Maritime City. Chapter 21. Spiritual Tournament. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. A few weeks earlier. In a city in the Cromwell Kingdom, there was a girl with black hair, fair skin, a beautiful face, and sensual curves. She was eating at a restaurant while thinking about the information she had just gotten. Crunch. It looks like the spiritual tournament at the Cromwell Kingdom is going to take place in 7 months. The youths up to 18 years of age will compete for the glory of being the best in the north of the central continent. The awards follow the following order. First place will receive a prize of 500 medium.grade crystals and a silver.grade technique. The second takes 300 crystals of the same level and a black.grade technique, while the third gets 100 crystals of the same grade. The spiritual tournament in question was a competition held every 8 years in the north of the central continent. It was also a way in which future specialists in the region could get to know and understand the differences in power that could exist between regional geniuses. It was also an opportunity to see stronger places. This tournament took place in different kingdoms with each edition. This time, it would be in the Cromwell Kingdom, but the last edition had happened in the Kingdom of the Waves. The spiritual tournament was organized by the Flaming Empire sects as a selection form. This is because, even if this region was impoverished in spiritual energy, there was still the possibility that talented individuals would appear. Although unusual in these areas, there were always some individuals with silver talent in previous editions of this tournament. And as people with such talent always looked for stronger places to go. So, the Flaming Empire sects were happy to profit from it. That was why there was such a generous reward for first place. For this competition, due to the age limit and the average talent found in this region, the participant strength was largely at the beginning of the 4th stage, with many being in the final parts of the 4th stage. But now and then, there might be some individuals who were already in the 5th stage, above level 40. These individuals generally dominated the competition and were in the top 3. Let's see if that minus will be at least at the beginning of the 4th stage, which is the minimum cultivation to participate in this competition when the competition starts. If he agrees to participate, as my master said, I want to see his face when he sees how big the world is. She thought with a mocking smile on her face. This girl was Ruth Miles, a disciple of Mina's mother, Maisie Coleman, and of the Grey Cloud sect of the Flaming Empire. She was now at level 45, at the age of 18. She was someone with silver talent, as was her teacher and many of the members of the Grey Cloud sect. When I think that now I have to go to the Black Plain and accompany that disgusting Minas for the next few months, I feel so bad. After that, she paid her bill at the restaurant and headed north to the Cromwell Kingdom, where the kingdom's border with the Black Plain was. Hours passed when the 3 carriages of the group of Minas passed by the plains of the Black Plain. The group had recovered well from the battle against coyotes the night before. Now they were only a few kilometers away from the maritime city. The smell of salt in the air could already be felt from where the group was. Then a beautiful view was ahead of Minas. An average city, very well built and preserved. There were palm trees near a beach, not far from the city. There was a bay at a point on the far side of the beach, with a considerable building and several ships. The city was also quite green, which was in stark contrast to the reality of the Black Plain. The group's carriages then entered the city. They decided to go to the pier and rent a boat to travel to Stone Island. Young master, the maritime city, despite not being as big as other important cities, you can find many things here. We should definitely look around to see if there is anything. Corporal Pike said with a smile on his face. What he said was really the truth. Even though it was in the Black Plain, this city had many merchants from the Brown Kingdom and Stone Island. So, there was a lot of business there, but not only that, but the big families of these 2 states also passed through this place when they went from one region to another. So, there were many opportunities here. Arriving at the pier, the group of Minas was soon attended to by a uniformed young woman. Welcome to the pier of the maritime city. Are you looking for a boat to go to Stone Island? Minas then replied. I would like to rent a boat for Stone Island. The young woman then explained. Well, we have two types of options for this service. First, it is a boat without a crew, which costs 2,000 crystals for a group like yours. The second is to rent a boat with a crew, which would cost 5,000 crystals. I recommend that you choose the second option if it is your first time traveling by boat from here to Stone Island," said the young woman with a sincere expression on her face. "I understand. We will take the second option." After paying for the boat's booking with a crew to travel in 2 days, Minos and his group proceeded towards the center of the city where they would stay. On the street, while Minos went with some of his soldiers to a restaurant near the hotel where they were staying, two people passed by talking loudly. "Believe me, Bill, I heard that a grade .2, low.grade, sword is going to be sold at the auction that will take place tomorrow," said a muscular man with long hair. "Mick, even on Stone Island, there are few places that can sell grade .2 weapons, let alone our city. This must be a rumor that Chief Ryan, from the Ocean Market, dropped to attract people to the monthly auction," replied a middle-aged man who had a large sword on his back. When he heard that, Minos soon became interested in this auction that will take place at the Ocean Market the next day. After all, he himself had a high-level sword technique, but he did not have an adequate weapon. His current sword was a grade .1, medium-level, which he had obtained in the Dry City. As for the weapons of the inheritance that Minos had received, they were all grade .3 and grade .4. He simply had no power to use a weapon of this level. And although Minos is at level 33, and a grade .2 weapon requires their user to be at least level 40, he could use weapons that required up more levels at this point due to the indestructible body technique. This was because the technique made Minos' body much stronger and more resilient during the 10 seconds of duration. And in that time, his defense would be impenetrable for those up to 100% stronger than him. To give you an idea, level 40 had exactly twice as much energy as someone at level 35. However, due to Minos' physique's innate ability, he would achieve the equivalent energy of level 35 at level 34. That way, the young Stuart had to go up just one more level to be able to use a grade .2, low.grade weapon. Of course, he could also only use a weapon of this classification for the time of 10 seconds that the technique gave. And considering his strength, Minos would also need to activate the devouring art not to exhaust himself completely. But for him, a grade .2 sword would definitely be worth it, even if he has to fulfill so many requirements. On the other side of the city, a group of 3 people was around a young man with blonde hair. On his clothes was the symbol of a silver eagle. These people were members of the Silva family. "Young master, are you sure you want to stay here another day just for that rumor?" asked one of the 3 men, who seemed doubtful about such a story. "Protector Philip, as you know, I will participate in the spiritual tournament in 7 months, so if I have a grade .2 weapon, I can have a good advantage in the competition," said the young man with blonde hair. This was Daryl Silva, the youngest son of the Silva family's master. He was at level 38, had a black talent, and was 17 at the present time. But even though he was at level 38, Daryl was confident that he could reach level 39 during the tournament and also be able to use a grade .2 weapon. "This is a great opportunity for me. Even for our Silva family, it is not easy to obtain a weapon of this grade. And even if we did, we would have to spend hundreds of medium.grade spiritual crystals to buy one." In the Silva family, weapons of such a degree were given only to those spiritual kings and some high-ranking members of the 5th stage of cultivation. And despite being the son of the master of the sect, Daryl would still take a long time before his father gave him a weapon of that level. After all, his family had a limited number of weapons at that level, just 20. "That's true." Protector Philip sighed in lament. Chapter 22. Auction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A day passed quickly, and a beautiful sunset could be seen in the city while the auction slowly approached. Minos was standing with some of his guards in front of a large building in the central part of the maritime city. It was a massive building with a luxurious decoration that would make anyone think that it was in the capital of the kingdom and not in this desolate region of the Black Plain. There was a lot of movement in front of the ocean market. Most of them were concentrated at the main entrance of the place. But there was a second entrance a few meters away, where from time to time, very well dressed and escorted people passed. That was the VIP entrance. At that moment, Pike started to speak with a serious look. "Young master, I just found out that there are two ways to enter this auction. The first is paying a fee of 1,000 low-grade crystals to enter the common section of the auction. That part corresponds to this place." Pike pointed to the long line while talking to Minos. "The second section is generally used by people from large families in the Brown Kingdom or those who intend to do big business in the auction. This is the VIP section. In it, the identity of those inside the room is kept confidential during the entire auction, and each VIP room has an exclusive outlet. To enter it, it is necessary to make a deposit of 200 medium-grade crystals that must be spent during the auction. If the person does not spend the deposited amount, then he will not be able to recover his crystals. Of course, members of the big families in the kingdom do not have to pay this deposit." Pike finished. I understand. We will pay that deposit, then. It is better not to take unnecessary risks. If the grade .2 sword is being sold, then I will buy it for sure," said Minos with a resolute expression. Then, Corporal Pike made the deposit at the Oceanic Market and got the VIP identification. After that, they entered the building through the VIP entrance. "Sir, can I see your identification?" asked a young attendant with a smile on her face. After showing the identification to the attendant, she spoke. "Please, I will take you to your room." Then, Minos was accommodated in a large room with sofas, drinks, and snacks. There was a large glass that overlooked the auction stage and also a concealment array. It didn't take long before the common area was completely full. It was almost time for the auction to start when the luminous arrays were finally extinguished, leaving only part of the stage illuminated. BL.net time passed, and soon a middle-aged man took the stage. He was very well dressed, with a luxurious suit that matched with his full beard and short hair. Minos and his group did not know, but this person was already at level 49, the limit of the general spiritual stage. But many eyes in the audience recognized the man's strength and were already shaking with excitement. Such a person as an auctioneer, this could only mean that, in fact, there was a big item being auctioned at this time. "Good night, everyone, and welcome to the Oceanic Market. I think everyone is already impatient to start, so I won't waste much time. Today, we have some high-level items for our region, so prepare your crystals. As for the number of objects auctioned, today we have only 10. He then clapped his hands and said, "I announce that the monthly auction of the Oceanic Market is open." Soon after, lights focused on an item that was already on stage in a place previously prepared. It was aged black parchment. To begin with, this is a specialized technique in moving, classified as black-grade and with 4 phases. It is called floating steps and can cause the user to triple his speed within a 20-second interval in the initial phase. That value can be increased exponentially in the following phases. The initial bid for the technique is 5,000 low-grade crystals, with a minimum increase of 100 crystals, 5,500, said someone at the moment the auctioneer had just finished speaking. I don't have any moving techniques in this classification to make available to the soldiers of the Black Plain Army. Minos thought reflexively. He did not want to distribute his silver or golden-grade techniques to people he did not trust or had not made large contributions to. That is why he had planned to give black-grade techniques to those who entered his forces. Only with their own merit could those soldiers obtain the best techniques. This was a measure to prevent Minos' future enemies from stealing techniques from him. At this point, the bid for the technique had already reached 7,200 when Minos made his bid. 8,000 after that, there was a momentary silence in the hall. This was a good technique, but paying more than 8,000 was already a lot for a moving technique of this grade. The lord in room 3 made a bid of 8,000, does anyone else? Asked the auctioneer. Finally, the auctioneer sold floating steps to Minos. Then, an attendant went to the stage and took the technician to the VIP room where Minos Group was. Next, we will have a spiritual shield. Type armor that can withstand an attack with all the power of someone at level 40. It was produced by an experienced blacksmith from Stone Island who is at the height of grade .1, high. Level. The auctioneer pointed to a suit of armor that looked like a large metallic robe. The starting bid is 3,000 low. Grade crystals, with a minimum increase of 100. 3,200, 3,600. The bidding continued for a while until the armor was sold for 5,800 crystals. Minos made no move, as he already had his indestructible body, which could defend against someone's attacks at level 39 and would continue to improve in a short time. Time passed, and 2 other items were sold. One was a grade 1, high. Level, Warhammer, which was sold for 7,000 crystals, and the other was a grade .1, medium. Level, Spiritual Meeting Array, which was auctioned for 11,000 low. Grade crystals. The next item is a map that, according to our studies, appears to be from a period of more than 100,000 years ago. From the items represented on the map and the assessment of the highest level expert on the subject within the Cromwell Kingdom, this map refers to a high. Level region in the south of the central continent. As many of you may know, today, in the southern region of our continent, there is only one empire and one kingdom. However, this is considered to be the strongest region, with several experts who have reached level 100 in the past. So, this map can take you to a precious place if you have the courage to take a chance. Perhaps even you can enter a spatial kingdom. After saying that, everyone was absolutely silent. Going to such a strong place was a chance for anyone, but immense dangers would also accompany any opportunity that came. Interesting, maybe I will visit the south of the continent when I am chosen by one of the sects of the Flaming Empire, said the young master of the Silva family in his private room. Young master, this is very dangerous. Even spiritual emperors are common in the south of the continent, alerted the protector Philip. The auctioneer then continued. As there is a chance that the map will not lead to any great treasure, the ocean market has evaluated this item at 5,000 crystals, with a minimum increase of 500 low. Grade crystals. Soon after, offers were made. 5,500, 6,000, 6,500, 7,000, 10,000. The young Daryl made a big move at once. 10,000, for the gentleman in room 5, does anyone give more? The auctioneer asked as he looked in the direction of the 8 special rooms. Very well. The map will be sold for 10,000 to the lord of room 5. The auction continued for a while, but no item caught the attention of Minos or the young master of the Silva family. The most expensive was sold at 7,000 crystals and the cheapest at 5,000. When the 9th item was finally auctioned off, a sword was slowly lit on the stage. It was about 1 meter long, with a spiral symbol on the snitch and a 4-leaf clover-like handguard. The auctioneer continued with his expressionless face when he announced. The last item of our auction is something that has been generating rumors in our city recently. And in fact, these rumors were true. This is a grade .2, low. Level, spiritual sword, which was forged by a great blacksmith from the Kingdom of the Waves, and it will be auctioned now. Chapter 23. The end of the auction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When the auctioneer started talking, all the spaces in the oceanic market were silenced. At that moment, one could even hear a needle fall to the ground. Everyone was so focused on this sword that no one dared to say anything before the auctioneer. In room number 5, the young Daryl was smiling from ear to ear. He thought to himself. He, this sword will be mine. Nobody in this place can compete with my Silva family. The auctioneer then proceeded with his presentation. As most people know, grade .2, low.grade, weapon requires a minimum level to use. For this sword, the lowest level you should have is 40. Below that, it would be of no use to you. And even if you have the minimum level required, under normal conditions, it is complicated for someone to get their hands on weapons like this in our kingdom. This was a fact for the northern region of the central continent, where the powers were at most at level 59. This was a limiter, as for a blacksmith to develop a grade .2 weapon, they would have to be between levels 40 and 59. As for the level of the weapon in grade .2, the blacksmith would have to be between levels 40 and 48 to forge one of low level. For a medium level, they would have to be between levels 49 and 55. And remaining high level weapons, which required someone with minimum spiritual energy equivalent to a spiritual king, from levels 56 to 59. This uneven differentiation between these classifications was related to the amount of energy that the blacksmith could handle. Therefore, the higher the level of the weapon, the greater the energy that would be needed during the forging. That was why it was difficult to have many grade .2 weapons being sold around, as in this auction made by the Oceanic market. The number of grade .2, low level, blacksmiths was not small, but they sold their weapons to a number of hundreds of times higher than theirs. And as for those blacksmiths of grade 2, medium level, they were still fewer numbers. As for the last step, their number would not exceed 15 in the entire northern region of the central continent. Because of all this, having a grade .2 weapon was something that most cultivators of the general spiritual stage could only hope for. Even spiritual kings had to be content, in many cases, with a grade .2, low.grade, weapons because there weren't many better than that on the market. As for the big families generally had one or two high.level weapons, while most would be low.level. The reason why Minos did not inherit any grade .2 weapons from his father, this was because Albert Stuart was a subordinate of the royal family. And as such, when Albert passed away, the Brown family collected his spiritual weapon. Well, we're not going to mess around too much. The former owner of this weapon decided to dispose of it for his own reasons. However, we make sure that it is in good condition. As for its minimum bid, the previous owner demanded that trading be done with medium.grade crystals. Therefore, the initial price will be 200 crystals, with a minimum increase of 20 crystals. Said the auctioneer, while he had his arms behind his back, with an expressionless face. Soon after, someone made the initial move. 220, 240. 300, the young master of the Silva family shouted loudly. 320, Minos then made his first move. 340, young Daryl said while having a nervous expression on his face. He couldn't believe he had someone with as many medium.grade crystals as he did. However, he only had a total of 400 crystals of that level. Minos then said calmly. 360, Daryl Silva then couldn't take it anymore when he said it. 380, friend, I am the young master of the Silva family, so give me a face here. Soon after that, many people started to argue in the common area of the hall. Wow, I never thought that someone of such status would be here today. Someone said surprisingly. Humph, what a despicable thing, he uses his family's status to get the sword. Said another person, disdainful. He is only doing what he can to get such a weapon. If I were in his place, then I would do the same. Said a young man in the middle of the group. While everyone was discussing the presence of the young master of the Silva family, Minos was as calm as before while he was thinking. Oh. The young master of the Silva family, you say? I don't give a damn. When many were beginning to think that the auction would end this way, Minos then spoke coolly. 400, everyone in the hall was silent after that. Is he really going to challenge the Silva family? Someone asked in disbelief. Perhaps he is a member of a power as big as the Silva family. When Daryl heard Minos bid, he nearly vomited blood. Who is this bastard? He thought to himself. It seems that this young master doesn't care about that at all. Can you at least tell me what strength is behind you? Asked the young master Silva. Humph, if you are a nobody, then I will just kill you and take that sword by force. He thought with an evil look on his face. While everyone was thinking about the possible response of the big shot in room 3, not a word was heard. Minos completely ignored this member of the Silva family. Tell you where I come from. Do you think I'm stupid? Minos thought to himself with a smirk on his face. After a while of such silence, the auctioneer ignored the fact that the young Daryl was left in a vacuum and then said. Any other move higher than that of the gentleman in room 3? At this point, Daryl Silva was steaming with rage when he said to Protector Philip with a grotesque expression. Find out who that person is as soon as possible. Well, since there are no more offers, the item will be sold for 400 medium-grade crystals to the gentleman in room 3. Said the auctioneer with the same empty expression as before. After that, a young receptionist at the auction took the sword that was placed in a metal box to Minos' office. Okay, that's it for this time. The Ocean Market expects guests to come back whenever possible. In 1 month, we will have a new round of auctioned items. He then sighed and said. The auction is officially over. Inside room number 3. Young master, disregarding that member of the Silva family can be very problematic for us. He alerted Corporal Pike with a concerned face. Don't worry about this now. Even if he finds out who I am, he is likely to think that I spent all my inheritance from my father on that sword. Therefore, this person should not involve the top echelons of the Silva family. He'll probably want to act on his own and take the sword after he kills me. This must be the most likely course of action for him. But with the protection given by the Oceanic Market and the fact that we are going to the Stone Island at dawn, even if he finds out, it will only happen when we are far away from here, Minos said with a smile on his face. And even if he follows us to the Stone Island, I am still confident that we will emerge victoriously. After hearing this, the soldiers who were with Minos sighed in relief. They were not like their young master. They did not like fights and exciting things. After that, the sword of grade .2 was finally delivered through a special space that was on each door of the VIP rooms. This was a mechanism to avoid the contact of the low-ranking employees of the Ocean Market with the special customers. This is because these groups were often more vulnerable to passing on inside information. With measures like this, the Ocean Market would, at least, somewhat hinder the criminal actions that could occur after a valuable item is sold. After checking the sword for a moment, Minos kept it in his spatial ring and led the group out of the large building where the auction was held. After leaving the building by an exclusive exit, Minos and his group walked for some time until they reached the hotel where they were staying. They would stay for a few more hours and then begin the maritime part of their journey to Stone Island. While the group did this, there were 3 people in a certain hotel on the other side of the city. There were 2 protectors and the young master of the Silva family. Shit. Daryl was furious at what happened at the auction. He had missed a golden chance of getting an important weapon for his future plans. Young master, don't worry too much now. Philip will find out about that person's past soon. When this happens, we can act. Said a strong and tall man, who was dressed in silver armor. Chapter 24. Boat Trip. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The sun was shining on the horizon as the day slowly set in. There was a medium-sized boat traveling northwest of the Black Plain region. This boat was very well looked, and although it was not luxurious, it had the basics to accommodate a group of fewer than 15 people and was very clean. At that moment, it was sailing calmly, while the sea had a calm and beautiful appearance. The water was crystal, clear to the point of seeing a few meters of depth. Anyone could see several fish coming and going. The noise of some seagulls could also be heard in the distance. There were 14 people on the boat. These were the group of Minos, plus the boat crew in question. They had left the maritime city very early, even before sunrise. For this part of the trip to Stone Island, Minos and his group would have to spend 3 days traveling on that boat. This was a long distance, and they didn't have the most powerful boat available. However, this was not a problem for Minos, but perhaps it was for some of his guards. Some of the group were traveling by boat for the first time and were very sensitive. Even for this small stretch with calm waters, some of them were already feeling sick. Of course, if their level had reached the general spiritual stage, none of this would have happened. That's because being able to use free energy in nature improved your senses to the point where you could ignore certain sensations around you. But it was a pity that none of them reached this level, despite the small distance from the current cultivation of each of them. However, this would be resolved when they arrive at Stone Island. Minos planned to buy several spiritual pills, which could help his subordinates to level up. With that, at least on the way back from the trip, they wouldn't have this problem. At that moment, a young woman dressed in a cook's uniform and with a decent appearance was bringing some delicacies and drinks for Minos to try. "Young master, try this meal that I prepared," said the young woman in a lovely voice. There were several sliced fruits on the plates placed on a table, some pasta that looked like different types of bread with jars of jam and pasta on the side. There were also 2 different types of juices. "Oh! It looks delicious," Minos exclaimed in surprise. Although he paid a good amount of crystals for this trip, he did not expect much from the services offered. So, he was surprised to see such quality. Crunch. This is very good. Can I know what you are called?" Minos asked as he savored his meal. "This humble one is called Wendy, young master," she answered. "So Wendy, do you know where these products come from?" Minos asked curiously. He, of course, was interested in knowing where these items came from, which had a decent amount of spiritual energy. "I'm not sure, but I believe it's came from the Cromwell Kingdom, as it's have a great spiritual quality," replied Wendy. "Oh. I understand. By the way, are you from the maritime city or somewhere on Stone Island?" Minos asked with a smile on his face. Anyone who saw how he was talking to this girl would think he was interested in her, but that was not the case. Despite being a young man who had his interests, Minos had many commitments and had not yet been involved with anyone. And although he was not against the idea of having more than one woman or having casual relationships, he is not yet looking to have relationships with someone he has just met. So, he was not trying to get this girl to bed but trying to learn something from her. "I am from Maritime City, young master." How is your life over there? Any major problems that ordinary people often face?" Minos asked curiously. "Nothing critical, just the usual. Although the city is within the Black Plain, it still has a better spiritual concentration than the surroundings. It is also not easy to go to other places when you don't have a high talent. But despite paying a higher tax, living in the maritime city still creates many opportunities for those who are from this region, and there is also nothing much better where we can go here," she said sincerely. "I see," Minos said thoughtfully. "Why does the young master ask about this?" she asked curiously. "Curiosity. I heard that there was a place around here by the Black Plain, which had good opportunities for people with less talent," Minos spoke vaguely. "You should be looking for such a place within 1 year. Maybe you have an opportunity to improve your life." After hearing this, the young woman returned to the kitchen inside the boat. She did not understand this young master very well. There was nowhere like what this young master had said as far as she knew. Apart from the maritime city, there was nowhere with opportunities within thousands of kilometers. While Minos and his group traveled slowly to Stone Island, there were 3 people around a well-dressed young man in a hotel in the maritime city. 3 of them were standing on the balcony of the room they were in while the young man was sitting in a chair. The young man was eating calmly while the 3 people around him were giving him the important information he needed to know. "Young master, I discovered the identity of that person who bought the grade .2, low grade, sword at yesterday's auction. And to my surprise, he is someone that the young master already knows. Protector Philip said with a smile on his face. Oh. What big family is he from? Maybe from the Miller family? Asked the young Darrell. No, actually, that someone has no support. He is the brat of former General Albert Stewart. Gulp. How can it be? How could this guy get in my way? Isn't he afraid of dying for offending someone he can't? Darrell started to speak as he grew more and more irritated. He could hardly believe that the person who made him lose his face the night before was that ant. Such a worm spent an incredible 6 years in an unconscious state while losing the best time for cultivation. The young Darrell was increasingly irritated by this. That worm must have spent his father's entire inheritance on buying that sword. But, why would he do that? Darrell asked out loud. He should hardly have started cultivating. Even if he were a genius at first, it would take a few years before he could use such a sword. Maybe he is being used by someone. From what I heard, there were 10 other people in his group. But none of them had the profile of the butler Dillion. Maybe he was kidnapped or something. Regardless, I knew that the strongest one is not even at level 40. So, picking up this sword will be like taking candy from a child, said the Protector Philip with an evil smile on his face. Philip was confident of being able to destroy the group of Minos easily. After all, there were 3 spiritual generals in his group, at levels 41, 42, and 43, counting on him. And even if the opponent's numbers were higher and that gave them an advantage when they combined their power against each of the protectors, there was still the fact that the 3 protectors of the Silva family had one more technique than the enemies, due to the fact they are in a stage of higher cultivation. The number of techniques could be a great advantage in a fight, which could turn the result. As for Minos, he did not care for such a person. Even if he had started to cultivate the moment he woke up, he should not have been above level 19. That's right, It makes things easier for me. Not only did I not spend my precious medium-grade crystals, but I can also get this grade .2 sword, for free and very easily. Darrell now had a dazzling smile on his face. Where is him now? The young Master Silva asked anxiously. The Protector Philip then said. He and his group left the maritime city earlier today. They were going to Stone Island. They know how to get away. This is not bad at all. I was already going there. We go immediately. As soon as we get there, we have to hunt and kill that idiot and the group with him. Now I will have the sword of grade .2, and I can still get a spiritual pill to level up. It seems that I will do very well in the spiritual tournament. Darrell spoke with great anticipation. After saying this, Darrell Silva and his 3 protectors left the hotel and headed towards the port of Maritime City. They would start following in Minos' footsteps from then on. Chapter 25. Shocking changes. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. 2 days passed quickly when a young woman was approaching the dry city. She used a spiritual beast in the 4th stage of cultivation, which looked like a great eagle. It was completely white, over 2 meters high, and had a sharp beak that was completely yellow. The young woman had beautiful black hair, a graceful face, and a sensual body, which would make any ordinary person lose their attention for a moment. She was also very well dressed, with a long green dress and a white hat on her head. When she was finally supposed to be seeing the dry city in front of her, she was slowly beginning to see a strange landscape. There was a large part of the territory covered in green. Clearly, there were many cultures growing in these areas. The place of these cultures was not that large in area, but it would be enough for anyone to notice such a thing. This made this young woman doubt for a moment whether she was really on the Black Plain and, specifically, close to the dry city. That's because when she came to this place just over 13 months ago, there was no such thing. She was very confused by this, but she decided to go ahead and ask the questions that she had in a second moment. She slowly descended from the south side of the city, leaving her great eagle in an open place, following her journey on foot through the city. As she walked down the street, she quickly got lost and didn't know where to go. The place was completely different. She hadn't seen so many buildings in this city when she came here before. How can this place have changed so much in such a short time? She thought with a shocked expression on her face. And really, the change that the dry city has undergone in the last year has been simply amazing. Now, the area size of the city had decreased by almost 2/3, but the little more than 1/3 of the original area remaining was flourishing in the best possible way. This was due to the 4 spiritual arrays of grade 1, high level, installed near the city's central region. As a result, the regions affected by the arrays soon underwent a major change. The empty grounds were filled with new homes, buildings, and those old buildings that were improved and expanded to accommodate a larger number of people. Meanwhile, the rest of the city has been emptied and completely destroyed. And all of this was done following Minas planning for the city. So, there was a very nice look to the city now. It didn't look like a huddle that grew uncontrollably, but it seemed well planned and had a feeling of convenience and comfort. If looked from above, the city's shape would look like 4 large circles that intersected near Minas Mansion. There were also a considerable amount of trees on the streets that made you forget that you were in the poor lands of the Black Plain. Ah, the young woman let out a slight cry of surprise, but luckily no one heard her. The reason for such a cry was that she realized that the amount of spiritual energy around the city was at least 50% greater than when she came here last time. How did this happen? I thought this place had a spiritual root that sucked out a lot of the free energy in heaven and earth. How did they solve this problem? She thought to herself as she continued to walk around the city. She finally managed to find the mansion in the middle of the city after asking for directions from people on the streets. But seeing the mansion also surprised her. The place was at least 3 times bigger than before. There were also a lot of people coming and going, wearing the same type of uniform. In front of the mansion, there was a lush garden with a fountain in the middle. In the background, the building with 4 floors and many windows could be seen. Although not overly luxurious, it was well done. There weren't many spiritual arrays in it since Minas still needed to bring array masters to the dry city, but there were some that belonged to the building before modernization. Anyway, the young woman slowly entered the building, while her mouth was open in shock at everything she saw. She finally returned to normal after hearing someone speak to her. "Welcome to the local government. How can I help you?" said Secretary Mia, who was at the reception, next to Minas's office. I would like to see Minas Stewart," said the young woman quickly. "I'm sorry to inform you, but the young master is not in the dry city at this moment," Mia replied sincerely. "Isn't he? And where would he go?" Mia then replied nonchalantly. "I can't report this." "You cannot. So who's in charge here? Let me talk to him." "I am here at the behest of your young master's mother," said the young woman impatiently. She was the disciple of Minas' mother, Ruth Miles, who had come with Maisie the last time. With the time that passed, she was already at level 45, and after leaving her last training, she had decided to come to fulfill the mission that her teacher had passed. "Oh. So, it was you. Butler Dillion is in charge now. Come with me." A while later, they headed for Minas' office, where Dillion was at the moment. Dillion was dispatching a soldier when the office door opened, and Mia and young Ruth entered. "Butler Dillion, this lady is here because of the young master's mother," Mia said quickly before leaving the room. "So you're here at the behest of Mrs. Maisie. Can you tell me the reason for your visit?" Dillion asked with a smile on his face. "My master gave me the mission to come here, after a year and a half from when we last came here, but as I finished my recent training earlier, I decided to come just before this time. She had ordered me to find her son after that time to assess his level. If he had reached the 4th stage of cultivation, I should talk about the spiritual tournament, which will take place in 7 months in the Cromwell Kingdom, and then accompany him there if he decided to participate in this competition. I see, Mrs. Maisie wants the young master to fight with the younger generation to understand a little of the world," said Dillion as he held his hands behind his back. "I really think it might be a good idea, but the young master is on his way to Stone Island. And I don't know when he comes back. It could take a few weeks." Stone Island. Why did he go there? Ruth asked curiously. Butler Dillion said vaguely. "As a leader, the young master has his responsibilities. But if you want to go after him, then you must look for someone named Elin Nash. The young master must meet with her when he arrives at the Stone Island." "I understand. In fact, how has this place changed so much in such a short time?" Ruth asked with a curious look on her face. You must be very curious, huh? I will not go into details, but when the young master said that he did not need Mrs. Maisie's help, how can I say? He was not kidding," Dillion said as he had a big proud smile on his face. Seeing and hearing this, Ruth didn't know what to say while she was thinking to herself. Where does all this confidence come from? Even though this place has improved a lot, it still doesn't give you the right to say that you don't need the help of a sect like ours. After a while, she finally spoke. It seems that you are very confident in your young master." The butler Dillion just smiled but said nothing. He didn't need to talk about Mina's secrets, just because the other side was not an enemy. Even if she were the mother of his young master, he still wouldn't say anything. When she saw that her poll was unsuccessful, Ruth just sighed in disappointment. She was really curious about these people. Not only did Butler Dillion seem to trust this Minas Stewart blindly, but so did the other people in this place. Even the last time she came here, people looked at Minas as if he were a savior. Never mind. When I accompany him to the spiritual tournament, maybe I will understand this. Ruth thought to herself. Well, since my master's son isn't here, then I'll go to Stone Island. Until later. Ruth said goodbye and went quickly towards the south side of the city, where she had left her spiritual beast. Meanwhile, the boat on which Minas was traveling was rapidly approaching Stone Island. A glimpse of the island could already be seen on the horizon. Minas was enjoying the view of the sea in front of him as he thought with a smile on his face. Stone Island, huh? I want to see what you can offer me. Chapter 26. Stone Island. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Quickly the silhouette of Stone Island could be seen on the horizon. However, due to the enormous size of the island, which was about twice as large as the Brown Kingdom, only a part of the territory could be seen. Stone Island was a place not only large in area but also in population. Due to its huge mineral reserves, the island had many blacksmiths, which also attracted the attention of the common population, who needed the weapons made by those blacksmiths. Allied to this, the island had a spiritual density that was on par with the best places in the north of the central continent. For this reason, there was a large population that exceeded 200 million inhabitants. And with such a population, even if spiritual plants did not grow on the island, there were still numerous alchemists and array masters due to the high demand. It was worthwhile for them to live on Stone Island, even if they had to import part of the resources necessary for their activities, as there was a great demand for their services. However, despite having a good offer for these two types of occupations, the items sold on the island by array masters and alchemists were still limited to grade .2, low level. This is because, for specialists above that level, it would be increasingly disadvantageous to stay on Stone Island, where they would have to import much of what they needed. Thus, those who managed to pass this classification, they preferred to live close to places where they could grow their own medicines. These were the cases of kingdoms near the Black Plain, such as the Cromwell Kingdom, Kingdom of the Waves, and even the Brown Kingdom. There was a good supply of resources needed for these two professions in these places. As for why Minas was not going to negotiate in one of these places, well, This is because the items sold by him would be more attractive on Stone Island and would also attract fewer problems if the deals were done there. Even if he were to become a competitor to the Cromwell Kingdom in the future, it would still take a long time for him to affect that kingdom's relations with Stone Island. And as for the Brown Kingdom, Minos did not want the noble families to know that the Black Plain had been recovered and could yield large quantities of crystals. And he didn't have to worry about being discovered because someone who passed through the Dry City said something to the kingdom's noble families. This is because, in addition to traders who appreciated information even from poor places, no one of importance would pass through the Dry City. Even if they needed to pass through the Black Plain, they would rather camp than enter that city, which could not even offer the same quality that your makeshift camps. As for traders, most of those who passed through the Dry City were traders from other kingdoms or smaller merchants who had no influence. So, Minos could be sure that, as long as he did not do business within the Brown Kingdom, then it would take a long time for the noble families to notice the change in the Black Plain region. Anyway, Stone Island was the best option for Minos, and he had also already made an agreement with the merchant Elon Nash. Slowly the boat in which young Stuart's group was on began to approach a large port. There were dozens of boats moored on a long pier and also a few ships in another location a few kilometers away. It was really a huge place with a lot of people moving. At the bottom of the port, a large city could be seen that was at least 5 times larger than the maritime city, from which Minos had passed. This was the city of Portland, one of the 4 major port cities on Stone Island. The city was the main trade route between the Brown Kingdom and Stone Island due to the shorter distance of this region with the maritime city. Minos' group said goodbye to the crew that had brought them here and then headed for the port. At that point, there were numerous guards who regulated the entry of people to Stone Island. At this moment, Minos' group was stopped by a guard, and then he started talking. "Welcome to Stone Island. To enter our territory, you have to pay a fee of 500 low-grade crystals per person." Here it is, 5,500 crystals, Minos said while paying the guard after hearing this. "Okay, your group can come in," replied the guard indifferently. After that, the group of Minos left the port and rented 3 carriages. At that moment, the driver of the first carriage said, "Where are we going, gentlemen? This is our first time here. Take us to a good hotel," Minos said calmly. He did not know this place, but he would stay in this city for a few days until he went to the Nash family headquarters, where he would meet with Elon Nash. The Nash family lived mainly in the capital of Stone Island, which was in the island's central region. Minos had obtained this information from the butler Dillion before leaving the Dry City. However, Minos wanted to know what this port city had to offer before leaving. This is because, despite not being the capital of Stone Island, Portland still had many businesses available. In addition, Minos wanted to find blacksmiths, alchemists, and array masters to bring to the Black Plain. As it would be more difficult to convince someone from the capital, he wanted to start here. So, even if he didn't do big business here, he might still be able to attract some of these professionals. As for business in the capital, this would be about selling Minos items through Elon, and it would also be a place that would have a greater offer and better resources for the Black Plain. In the little more than a year that he had spent, Minos had collected just over 500,000 crystals, the ones he planned to spend on this visit to Stone Island. That way, he was well prepared to get items that would leverage the strength of his territory. "Oh. So, it's your group's first time around here. Are you traders who came to do business on the island?" asked the coachman, with a curious expression on his face. "That's right. We came to do business on the island," Minos said calmly. "I understand. Many people like you arrive here daily. I'm going to give you a hint, although Portland doesn't have the highest level items on Stone Island, there's still a lot of good stuff," said the coachman sincerely. Minos then asked, "Can you tell me a little bit about it?" "Haha, of course. Although the best specialists from the 3 professions are in the capital, there are many alchemists and array masters in our city. This is because it is easier and faster to obtain imported resources in port cities. Also, the capital already has its demand met almost entirely by the specialists there. So, many of these professionals are spread out in places like Portland. I venture to say that in addition to the capital, only the port cities have a great offer of the products sold by these specialists. The coachman finished. Thanks for the information. After a while, Minas Group arrived at a hotel in the central part of the city. It was a large building, with 6 floors and a glass front. This was the Hotel Olsen, a high-end hotel that belonged to one of the great noble families on Stone Island, the Olsen family. The Hotel Olsen chain spread across all the island's major cities and provided one of the best hotel services in the region. Minas and his group had slowly entered the hotel. It was excellent. Several types of special arrays improved the atmosphere of the hotel. For example, there were many light arrays and others that controlled the environment's temperature. There were also 2 large elevators that operated through arrays as well. Then, a well-dressed attendant answered them. "Welcome to the Hotel Olsen. How long will your group stay at the hotel?" "Hello, we are staying for a week," Minas answered the attendant's question. "We have 3 types of rooms in our hotel. The simple type would cost 500 crystals per week each. The intermediary costs 800 crystals per week, and the high-level one would cost 1,200 crystals per week each," said the young attendant politely. "We are going to have 5 simple rooms and 1 intermediate." Minas then took the required amount of crystals and gave the attendant. After a few minutes, the entire group of Minas was already accommodated in their rooms. As he watched the city landscape through his bedroom window, Minas began to think about what he would do next. "Today, I have to get some pills for these soldiers who are with me to advance. They have already accumulated the amount of energy needed to go up, but because of their blue-level talents, they cannot overcome this bottleneck without outside help. And as for that young master of the Silva family, he must come after me soon. He should be here in no more than a day. After that, he shouldn't be long in finding me." Minas thought to himself as he calculated his next actions. Chapter 27. Guild of Alchemy. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. A few hours passed, and Minas decided to go out and see if he could find the grade .1, high-grade, spiritual pills for his 10 soldiers. Through the Hotel Olsen, Minas had discovered that there was an alchemy guild in the city of Portland, where he could get in touch with many alchemists. Walking through the streets of Portland, Minas could see many things that were missing in the dry city. There were many upscale restaurants, stores specializing in the maintenance and sale of spiritual weapons, and a few stores that sold low-level arrays normally used in people's homes. Although it does not require a large amount of resources or high-level professionals, practical arrays that facilitated people's daily lives generated a good income. However, there were none of these in the dry city since there were no array masters there. Of course, there were no alchemists or blacksmiths there either. The landscape of the city was also magnificent. There were many spiritual trees everywhere. There were some squares too, which gave you a feeling of being close to nature. As for spiritual density, Minas couldn't feel it unless he started cultivating. But he was sure this place was as good as the capital of the Brown Kingdom, the city of the setting sun. After walking for a few minutes, Minas finally caught sight of a rectangular building, from which an intense medicinal smell emanated. It was the Alchemist Guild of the city of Portland. This was a very busy place. There were a lot of people coming and going. Minas slowly entered the building as he saw a crowd around a counter near the entrance. A young man was selling several bottles of spiritual pills in that place. Minas then stopped at the side of the line and asked a young man, who was waiting for his turn. "Friend, can you tell me what this line is for?" The young man then looked at Minas and frowned as he said, "You do not know. Maybe you're new here. This front desk is selling grade .1, medium-level, pills at half the normal price." "Half-price is this normal around here?" Minos asked in curiosity. It is clear that these pills would not be very useful for him since they could not help people reach the fifth stage of cultivation, but even so, he was curious. It is not normal. It looks like this alchemist is going to take an exam to move to the next level, so he's collecting crystals. Said the young man with a serious face. Oh. I see. I have a question, where can I find alchemists of grade .1, high level, here in this place? Minos asked with a smile on his face. The young man looked at him with a surprised expression on his face. He then said. You can find alchemists at this level upstairs. Okay, thanks for the help. Minos then said goodbye and went to the next floor. Once there, the medicinal fragrance in the air was even stronger than in the place where Minos had passed. There were about a little more than 10 benches on that floor, with slightly less movement as well. This floor looked like a large square with benches in the middle and a few rooms on the sides. Minos then approached a bench where there was less movement and asked the person who was there. Hello, do you have any spiritual pills to advance to the general spiritual stage? The person who was there was a middle-aged man who was wearing a big white robe. At the counter, the man looked at Minos for a second and then spoke. I have 2 pills to advance to the 5th stage. Each one costs 1,500 crystals. With these pills, as long as the user has already gathered the amount of energy needed to reach the level 40, then that person would only need a few hours to break to the next level after consuming them. After saying this, he showed Minos the flasks to find out. In that world, one person could tell the degree of quality of a pill by the fragrance, and the richer it was, the better the pill's effects would be. But not everyone could differ that because it was necessary to know many medicines and pills to be able to differ the quality of 2 spiritual pills. In the case of Minos, he knew it due to the memories of the god Henricus Longus. Although this god was not an alchemist, he still lived for more than 50,000 years, and so, he knew very well how to differ the quality of spiritual pills. As soon as Minos felt the fragrance, he noticed that it had a good quality. After that, he decided to buy them, when he handed over a bag with the crystals. Here the payment, I'll take the 2. By the way, sir, why aren't there a lot of people shopping at your counter? Minos asked with a curious face. The middle-aged man then looked at Minos for a moment and said with a smile on his face. You must be new here to ask such a question. This is due to the guild. It gives support to those alchemists who join the powers behind the guild, while the other alchemists can only use the place to make their negotiations. In the spiritual world, the alchemist guilds and the guilds of array masters and blacksmiths were local organizations where everything related to those professions happened. In an alchemist guild, ordinary people could get in touch with alchemists to buy spiritual pills. Young people could learn alchemy from the basics to the level that the guild was at, and perform the necessary tests to become an alchemist and receive their due classification. But these organizations were often supported by noble and wealthy families in the region in which they were based. These families were generally specialized in one of those professions and provided subsidies for those young people who joined them. With that, they could either charge less for their products or improve their skills more quickly. BDNV The middle-aged man then continued to speak. As I didn't join any of the big families behind the guild, so I don't get their support. The consequence of this is that my pills will be more expensive than that of the alchemist subordinate to these families. Minos then understood the situation after hearing this middle-aged man. But he was not sorry to have paid a little more for the pills, knowing that information could also help in Minos' future plans. Sir, what's your name? My name is Davis. Why the question? Said the man with a curious look on his face. Nice to meet you, Mr. Davis. My name is Minos Stewart. As an alchemist, you must have your own ambitions. Can you tell me why you refused to join one of the families behind the guild? Nothing big, I just wanted my own freedom. It wouldn't help to have power if I can't do what I want. He said sincerely. Oh. Then that's it. Well, since you are not against joining an organization as long as your freedom is maintained, then I have an offer for you. The man's eyes lit up when he heard that. Minos then continued. I am on business here on Stone Island, but I will be returning to my region in a few weeks. If you want to join my forces, you will have your freedom to sell your items however you want. I will only ask you to deliver a minimum amount of pills every month. I will also pay 700 crystals for each grade .1, high grade, pill that you sell in my territory. Of course, I will supply all the necessary ingredients as well. However, you must know that my region is still in development. I will give you a lot of advantages if you come with me, but the biggest advantage of following me now is that you will be more important when we become big in the future. Minos then finished his offer after letting out a breath. Minos then asked the man in front of him after a while as he pointed at the 2 bottles of pills. I need another 8 pills like these. How long would it take you to produce it? Davis took a while and then answered. I'm sorry, but I'm currently without the medicines needed for this type of pill. It could take several days for me to be able to produce it. But it shouldn't be difficult to get that amount from the other alchemists here on this floor. After saying that, Minos and Davis said goodbye. The young steward told him that he would be passing by again in a few weeks when he was returning. At that time, the middle-aged man should give him an answer to this offer. Time passed, and Minos got the other 8 pills to advance to the 5th stage. He spent 9,000 crystals on it and had to buy it from 4 different alchemists. After that, Minos and the soldiers who had accompanied him returned to the hotel. Here, each of you takes a pill and start cultivating. I want you all to move up to level 40 by tomorrow. Before long, all the soldiers began to cultivate while Minos thought to himself. Tomorrow morning, I should try to buy some better weapons for these soldiers. While Minos was planning, 4 people just arrived at a hotel not so far from where Minos was. These people were the young master of the Silva family and their 3 protectors. Protector Philip, go and find out where that wretch went. Daryl said as he had a big smile on his face. Okay, young master. Chapter 28. Preparing for battle. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Hours passed, and the sun was already rising on the horizon when the last soldier who was accompanying Minos finally reached level 40, the beginning of the general spiritual stage. As Minos knew that he and his group would soon have to fight with the forces of that young master, he decided to deliver a silver-grade moving technique to his soldiers, who were accompanying him. With this technique, these soldiers would be able to dodge enemy attacks even if the other side were a few levels stronger than themselves. In this way, Minos hoped to win that fight. But he wasn't risking too much here because as someone who had studied at the Spiritual Academy, an academy for nobles in the city of the setting sun, he knew that noble families in the Brown Kingdom could not send spiritual kings to protect their children around the world. Therefore, Minos was sure that the enemy side was limited by the general spiritual stage. And most likely, they were below level 45, as the trip to Stone Island was not so dangerous for people in that range of strength. A good example of this is the case of merchant Elin Nash, who, despite being a noblewoman of one of the largest families on Stone Island, she was still accompanied only by a guard at level 47. Therefore, according to Minos' calculations, Daryl Silva's number of guards should be between 2 and 4. As for spiritual power, they should be below level 45. Now that they've leveled up, I'm going to buy grade .1, high level, weapons for each of them. Unfortunately, I still can't pay for anything more than that. But even if I could, it wouldn't be as if there were so many grade .2, low grade, weapons being sold around. Minos thought to himself. After a while, Minos met with all his soldiers. He then began to expound his thoughts. Good job, everyone. Now that you've reached level 40, let's go out and get weapons for each of you. Those of grade 1, medium level, will not be good enough for you from now on. Soon, that young master of the Silva family must come after us, so today, after we buy the weapons, we are going to leave the city and wait for them to come to us. That way, we will have an advantage at the start of the fight." After saying that, all 10 men were a little anxious and happy. That's because they had reached a level that they would never have dreamed of reaching and being stronger. They wanted to fight to test their new strengths. They would also rise to the rank of sergeant, and soon they would start earning twice what they earned as corporals. This was 800 low-grade crystals, a small fortune for anyone who has grown accustomed to the poverty of the Dry City. "Come on," Sergeant Pike told the rest of the group while he led the rest of them. As they passed through the city's busy streets, Minos finally found the place where he had been appointed to go. Although the city of Portland also has a Smith's Guild, as Stone Island had an abysmal number of specialists in this profession, many of them did not do business inside the guild building. So, after looking for information at the Hotel Olsen, Minos discovered that there is a good place to buy grade .1, high-grade, spiritual weapons in the city center. It was a place called the Wolf's Den, a store that sold various types of spiritual weapons of grade .1. According to the information that Minos had received, despite being a little more expensive than in other stores, the products of this store in question were of very good quality, and there was also a large amount of weapons in stock, contrary to what could be seen elsewhere. Minos and his group then stopped in front of a store that looked like a cave in the middle of the mountain. There was a sign with a big blank name on it, the Wolf's Denver. There were also symbols of spears, swords, bows, arrows, sabers, hammers, etc. Minos' group then entered the scene. As soon as they entered, many weapons could be seen around the room. There was also not much movement. There seemed to be less than 5 people shopping at the place at that very moment. "Good morning. I would like to see the weapons of grade .1, high level, which are available for sale in this store," Minos said politely while holding his hands behind his back. As soon as he said that, an older man with a full beard and white hair then looked over at Minos and said, "Grade .1, high level weapons, there are 17 of its that are on sale right now." The older man then started to point to the different weapons that were visible to anyone who entered that place. Minos saw that most of them were swords, with a few spears, sabers, and a single war hammer. "Choose your weapons," Minos said as he looked at the 10 men around him. When he heard this, the older man looked at Minos with a surprised expression. He would never expect this young man actually to be buying weapons of this level for his subordinates. Although this type of weapon is not suitable for people in the 5th stage of cultivation, it was very common for people in this northern part of the central continent to wield weapons of 1 or 2 levels lower than what they could use. This young man must have a great strength behind him to spend so much on his subordinates. The older man thought as he scratched his beard. After a while, Minos' soldiers chose their weapons. There were 5 swords, 3 spears, 1 saber, and 1 war hammer among the chosen weapons. The older man then spoke with an indifferent expression on his face. "For these 10 weapons, the price is 59,000 low-grade crystals." After hearing this, Minos immediately paid for the crystals and then asked the older man, "Sir, I will soon be out hunting, and I want to trap my prey. Can you tell me a good place that sells spiritual arrays here in Portland?" The older man then replied with a smile on his face. "Oh. Then you will hunt, hee. I have a friend who is an array master. He has a store 300 meters from here. You just follow that same street. The name of the store is Burton's Alley." After hearing this, Minos thanked the older man and moved on. It didn't take long for him and his group to arrive at the store that the older man had indicated. It was a completely different place from the previous store. This place looked like a square box and completely black. There was a green light with the name Burton's Alley. After a while, Minos bought a grade .1, high level, spiritual array from this store, specializing in stunning those below level 40 for 30 seconds and slowing down the strength and speed of those above this level. Of course, the stronger the enemy, the lesser the effects. Minos spent 22,000 low-grade crystals on this array. And after leaving the store, he and his group left the city and went to a mountainous region a few kilometers away. Meanwhile, in the hotel where the young master of the Silva family was staying, two men were enjoying the scenery of the city of Portland through the balcony of the room in which they were, while young Daryl was having his breakfast quietly. At that moment, the protector Philip, who had left the previous night to obtain the location of his targets, entered the room with a smile on his face. "Young master, I already have the location of those people." "Oh. That is good. Where is he?" "Earlier today, he and his group were staying at the Hotel Olsen, but they went out shopping early. They went to a blacksmith's shop and then to an array master. After that, they left the city on the northwest side. We can follow their trail from there. That way, there are not many ways for them to escape us, hee. Guard Philip said with a satisfied expression. For him, this behavior of the group of Minas did not differ from that they are giving up their own lives. They were basically leaving a safe place, where it would be challenging to kill someone in daylight, and were going to a place where no one would know if they killed or were killed by something or someone. Those guys are making it easier for us. I want to see their faces when they are surprised by our group," Daryl said with a smile on his face. "Come on. I can't wait to get my new sword, hee. Chapter 29. The Ambush. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As Daryl's group began their pursuit, Minas and his soldiers were now standing on a mountain. The site around the group was a large rock formation with very little vegetation. There were only grasses in the few places where there was soil, with a waterfall not far from there. There was not a large flow of water, but there was a waterfall over 50 meters high. Minas and his soldiers were preparing the ground to receive their guests later. They had chosen this place, as it would be more difficult for their enemies to escape from them. After all, Minas could not allow any of them to flee, since if this happened, then the Silva family and other Brown Kingdom families could discover Minas' current strength and even what has been happening on the Black Plain. And that would be terrible for the young Stuart, since once others knew, they would definitely put Minas in their sights. Some powers could force him to join their forces, and others, such as those responsible for the death of Albert Stuart, could come after Minas. Anyway, the effects of one of those people running away would be terrible for Minas. So, he and his soldiers were preparing the ground near the waterfall in order to make any escape more difficult for their enemies. This is because some of them were certainly stronger than the group of Minas. So, if they were not careful, even if the other side couldn't win, it didn't mean that these enemies couldn't escape. Therefore, Minas and his group decided to bring the fight close to the waterfall. In that place, even someone from the 5th stage of cultivation would be seriously injured if they fell from a height of 50 meters. They also made some small changes to the surrounding terrain to facilitate the ambush. They spread, in part of the terrain opposite the waterfall, a lubricating substance on the rocks, something that would hinder the enemy's escape. This is because someone from the general spiritual stage cannot fly, and when moving on slippery terrain, although they can use their great strength to move more easily, they would still be severely delayed if they were to run in such a place. This would give the speed advantage to Minas soldiers. This array that I bought can affect a very large area, so I have to leave it to turn it on, only after the enemy group is very close to us. Minas thought calmly as he brought up the array of his spatial ring. After that, he placed 10,000 low-grade crystals, which was the limit of crystals that a grade .1, high-grade, the array could withstand. He then left it ready to go into operation as soon as he gave the signal to turn it on. But before starting the fight, I want to try to get some information from these people. Minas thought to himself as he hid the array behind a rock formation near the waterfall. With the array hidden, as long as it was turned off, 5th stage cultivators couldn't discover that there was such a thing hidden nearby. This is because, although they could feel the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, they could not feel an array that was not being used. Such a thing would only be possible when a cultivator reached the spiritual saint stage, in which it would be possible to perform soul probes through a technique of the soul, which could be learned from this level. This is because, at this stage, cultivators can live without a body, in their soul form, for a limited time. However, there was no such person in the entire northern region of the central continent, and therefore not a concern for Minos. At that moment, Minos, who was the only one in the group who was not wearing any armor or battle clothing, began to speak to the soldiers. All of you, listen to this. Stay on the sides of this terrain, but don't hide. The enemy already knows our numbers, and hiding would only make the other side more careful. Set up a small camp, build a fire, and start cooking something. Let's pretend that we came here to hunt and enjoy the beautiful scenery. Pay close attention to your surroundings, and when the fight starts, try to push the fight to the side of the waterfall. But before that, pretend to be surprised when they arrive and put on an appearance of despair before the fight. I want to see if I can get some information from these people. Minos said with a serious face as he was looking at the group of people in front of him. After that, they all agreed with their heads and started to carry out these last orders from Minos. Sergeant Pike then approached Minos and asked, "Young master, how will we fight if the enemy is much stronger than us?" "Don't worry about it too much. I'm pretty sure that the strongest person on the enemy side doesn't reach level 46. If there are 2 people at this level and 1 at level 45, then the strategy would be to gather 3 soldiers to face each of these 2 stronger, while the rest deal with the last of them. With this, the 4 soldiers would quickly kill the level 45 enemy and then return to deal with the remaining 2. After all, at level 46, someone has slightly less than 3 times as much spiritual energy as someone at level 40, like you. So, 3 soldiers would be enough to hold them, while the other group deals with the weaker side. After that, it would be relatively easy to deal with the 2 strongest ones that would remain. Another thing is that the enemy side does not have techniques as well classified as ours. This will give us some advantage in the fight. But be careful during the fight. A desperate person can be very dangerous." Minos finished speaking with a warning look to all of them. After hearing this, Pike and the other soldiers were amazed at their young master. He knew so much about cultivating and fighting. They barely understood how someone so young and who rarely fought could experience so much. That alone made them very confused. As for why Minos knew so much, well, that was due to the inheritance he had received. With the amount of knowledge from someone who lived for thousands of years, Minos knew many useful things at times like this. A few hours passed, and the group of Minos waited patiently for the arrival of the young master Silva and his subordinates near the waterfall. At that time, 4 people were approaching the place where the group of Minos was. These were the young Daryl and his 3 subordinates. It looks like they went in that direction. Protector Philip pointed his finger in the waterfall direction, where Minos' group was. Young Daryl then smiled and then said with a look of contempt, "What interesting guys, they must have gone hunting. Ha ha ha, how can you do such a thing when you have offended someone like me?" After hearing this, one of the protectors said, after laughing for a while, "Kakik, stupid people tend to behave like that, young master. Come on. I want to see the expressions of terror on their faces when they notice us, ha ha ha." Daryl said as he took the lead. After that, the group went quickly to the waterfall, where Minos and his group were. They had smiles on their faces. After all, the enemy group was composed only of spiritual warriors. And as far as they knew, with the inheritance of a spiritual king, like Albert, Minos should no longer have so many crystals after having bought the grade .2, low.grade, sword. With that, these 10 men who were with him, regardless of whether they were subordinated or even profiteers, they had no way to advance to the next stage of cultivation without a large amount of crystals. So, for those who were between levels 41 and 43, the general spiritual stage, this was an easy fight. In fact, maybe their young master was enough to kill the entire enemy group, and they didn't even have to make a move. This is because, even though Daryl Silva was still at level 38, as the son of the patriarch of the Silva family, all of his techniques were of the black grade. So, fighting those at a higher level was easy for the young Daryl, who had techniques with superior energy efficiency. It didn't take long, and the 4 people from the Silva family arrived at the waterfall. They could see that there were 11 people in this place, just as it had been reported to them. Minus group seemed to be camping in this place. In fact, they were eating right now. There was also a feeling of tranquility in the air that was passed by the beautiful landscape given by the waterfall a few meters away from where they were. And while the smell of roast meat spread around the place, the young Daryl then stepped forward while smiling from ear to ear and said to the 3 protectors who were beside him. "Let's start, hee hee."